Good morning. Earlier this year, back in January, Dr. Long and Reverend Wendy Lambert, Reverend Phil Greenwald, and I went up to Pittsburgh to go and visit a couple of different places. We wanted to go and visit Latrobe and learn about the home of Fred Rogers. As we were going to be preparing for our theme this year, Love Your Neighbor, No Exceptions, we wanted to learn more about Fred Rogers and his ministry of always talking about what it means to love our neighbors. But we also went up there because we wanted to go and visit with Rabbi Myers. Rabbi Myers, you remember, was the rabbi at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Still is the rabbi there in Pittsburgh. And you remember that it was at the Tree of Life Synagogue back in October of 2018 that a gunman walked in while they were having their Sabbath prayer services and opened fire, killing people who had come to worship that day. We went to go and visit Rabbi Myers, and we had an incredible time with him. He was such a man of strength, a man of faith, a man of real hope, a man who had helped to lead his congregation and his community through such a devastating and tragic time with such grace and love and strength. We got to talking with him, and while we were there, we learned that the Tree of Life Synagogue was actually still closed to the public. They were still closed. They were not meeting there for their worship services. They had been meeting at another synagogue down the road. It had all still been fenced off and closed since the shooting. They had some fencing barricades that were up around the outside of it, and originally they had these blue tarps that were covering the fencing to kind of block off the building and keep it secure. Well, they started looking at this and they said, these blue tarps covering the outside of the building, it's just really dreary and it doesn't give a very positive message to the community. We want to be able to be here as a shining light in such a dark time. So they started thinking about what could they do to kind of brighten up the outside where that fencing barricade was. One of their congregation members came up with the idea of, what if we held an art contest and we invite children from around the world to submit artwork that depicts hope? And using the art of children, we could put these on big banners that would cover this fencing rather than the blue tarps. So that's what they did. They held an art contest and they invited children from around the world to submit their drawings depicting hope. Well, thousands of children from around the world, New Zealand, Australia, Europe, all over the US, they sent in their drawings, their artwork. There was a committee that was formed from the congregation to judge the artwork, and they were going to choose the winners. They had about 400 feet of fencing that they needed to fill, and so it was going to take probably about 100 or a little over 100 drawings that they would then blow up and put on these banners that would cover this 400 feet of fence. When the committee got together, they wanted to make it a blind competition, so they didn't know who any of the students were, any of the children who submitted the artwork. They didn't know where they came from, their background, anything about them. They simply were looking at the art. They went through and they judged these thousands of pieces of art that had come in, and they narrowed it down and they chose their little over 100 winners. Now, once they went back then and started to matching up the artwork with the names of the children who did it, they came to realize something fascinating. There were 3 places in particular where more than half of the winners came from. Those 3 places were Parkland, Florida, Newtown, Connecticut, and Columbine up in Colorado. Of course, this wasn't intentional. Again, it was blind. They had no idea where the children were coming from. But more than half of the winners from around the world came from Parkland, Newtown, and Columbine. Places that have all suffered devastating loss, grief, and tragedy from horrific gun violence in their schools. Rabbi Myers was reflecting on this and he said, it seems to me that there's something going on with kids in our country, that despite the horrors, they're able to find hope. And it seems to me that if they can do it, then we have to do it. That stuck with me. These kids who have experienced such horrors in their community seem to just have this deeper understanding of what it meant to find hope and beauty, even after all that they had been through. It reminded me of a story of Jesus talking to his disciples and his followers. In Matthew chapter 18, he says, he called a child whom he put among them and said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." to be able to go back and have faith like children, to be able to see the world through a child's eyes, to be able to live through difficult times and still be able to find hope and beauty in the world around us. There really is so much that we can learn from children. As you and I go through the difficult times in life, sometimes it gives us a perspective that helps us to understand hope even more. Today, whatever you're going through, I hope you'll remember the story from Pittsburgh and from Rabbi Myers, the lessons that the children in Parkland and Newtown and Columbine can teach us, that we can all find hope, we can all find beauty in the world around us if we're simply willing to open our eyes and look to see where God is at work. Today, you can have childlike faith. I hope you make it a great day.